Your Excellency, why are there so many traditional Catholic groups today? Because Vatican II divided traditional Catholics over how to understand the papacy.
Lecture: The Post-Vatican II Crisis and the Catholic Magisterium. The crisis following the Second Vatican Council, 1962 to 1965, split the traditional Catholic world into distinct theological factions based on how they reconcile the defection of the modern Roman hierarchy with the dogmas of papal infallibility and the indefectibility of the Church. To determine which position truly upholds the historic Roman Catholic Magisterium, we must evaluate each group against traditional dogmatic theology.
What are the main positions in this crisis? Recognize and resist, total Sedevacantism, and Sedeprivationism.
Part 1. The factions explained. The unicum, or recognize and resist groups, which include the FSSP, ICKSP, and the SSPX, recognize the post-conciliar popes as true, formal Roman pontiffs, but actively resist their modernist teachings, the new Mass, and universal disciplinary laws. The Ecclesia Dei communities compromise by operating completely under the modern Vatican's canonical authority, while the SSPX and SSPX resistance maintain an unauthorized apostolate, literally filtering papal decrees by accepting what matches tradition and rejecting what does not.
What is recognize and resist? It recognizes the Pope, yet resists his modern teachings, rites, and laws.
Total Sedevacantist groups, such as the CMRI, SSPV, and MHFM, argue that because the post-Vatican II popes publicly manifested heresy, they lost their office automatically via divine law. For total Sedevacantists, the Holy See has been completely vacant for decades.
What does total Sedevacantism claim? It denies the modern popes, but struggles with the Church's visible legal continuity.
Sedeprivationist groups, represented by the IMBC and the Roman Catholic Institute, apply a Thomistic distinction to the papacy known as the Cassiciacum Thesis. They argue that modernist claimants are popes materially because they were legally elected, keeping the institutional vacancy filled and maintaining the legal hierarchy. However, because they hold public heresy and lack the intention to promote the objective good of the Church, Christ does not communicate to them the formal authority or the charism of infallibility.
What does Sedeprivationism teach? It says the claimants hold the office materially, but lack formal authority.
Conclavists like the Palmarians and the Pope Michael lineage attempted to solve the vacancy by electing their own lay anti-popes or claiming mystical papal successions, veering completely into non-Catholic cult structures. Finally, non-aligned groups like the Thuc lineage represent a sacramental line of holy orders rather than a unified theological position, while the Old Catholics are schismatics who rejected Vatican I back in 1870 and remain entirely outside this modern discussion.
What must any Catholic solution preserve? Both papal infallibility and the Church's indefectibility.
Part 2. The Dogmatic Judgment. To uphold the true Roman Catholic Magisterium, a position must simultaneously preserve two infallible dogmas: the primacy and infallibility of the Pope, meaning a true Pope cannot universally command heretical or soul-destroying liturgies, and the indefectibility of the Church, meaning the visible legal structure and lawful succession cannot completely terminate. The unicum position held by the SSPX and FSSP fails to preserve papal infallibility. By claiming a true pope can issue universal laws, rites, and canonizations that are harmful or heretical, they fundamentally destroy the dogma of papal infallibility and reduce the pope to a figurehead whose magisterium must be cross-checked by private judgment. They do, however, preserve the Church's visibility. Total Sedevacantism successfully protects the office of the papacy from defection by declaring that heretics are not popes. However, it fails to preserve the indefectibility of the Church. By claiming the legal structure and valid electors have completely ceased for over 60 years, they cannot explain how a future pope could ever be legally elected without permanently breaking apostolic succession.
How do we judge these positions? By the infallible magisterium, not by private judgment or convenience.
Sedeprivationism is the only position that solves the crisis without violating a single pre-conciliar Catholic dogma, making it the true upholder of the magisterium. It perfectly preserves papal infallibility by correctly affirming that the modern claimants have zero formal authority, meaning their modernist heresies do not touch the infallible magisterium. Concurrently, it preserves the indefectibility of the Church by maintaining that the claimants hold their offices materially, thereby preserving the legal, institutional continuity of the Church and allowing for a future restoration of the papacy. In conclusion, the Sedeprivationist groups are the sole defenders of the true Roman Catholic Magisterium, protecting the divine nature of the papacy while maintaining the visible legal perpetuity of the Church structure.
Which position best preserves both dogmas? The The Cassiciacum Thesis, material continuity without formal authority.